Most people do not fail because they are weak. They fail because they never learn to govern themselves. Every morning, there is a quiet decision that shapes the rest of the day. Most people lose that decision before the day even begins. They surrender to comfort. They surrender to delay. They surrender to impulse. If you cannot control the first action of your day, you will struggle to control the larger actions of your life. One philosopher understood this deeply. His name was Immanuel Kant. This is purely noetical, where we study discipline, power, and human behavior through the minds of history's most serious thinkers. Not to sound intelligent, not to collect quotes, but to build structure in your thinking and strength in your character. Today, we examine the secret of 5 a.m. through the teachings of Kant, not as a trend, not as a lifestyle image, but as moral training. In this session, you will understand why Kant believed freedom begins with self-control, why waking early is not about productivity, but about authority over yourself, how repeated discipline strengthens the will, and how private order produces public strength. This content is educational and philosophical. The purpose is to understand ideas about discipline and character, apply them wisely and responsibly. Immanuel Kant lived his entire life in the city of Königsberg. He was not known for adventure. He was known for structure. His neighbors famously observed that his daily walk was so regular that people could adjust their clocks by it. Historical records describe that he woke at 5 a.m. consistently for decades. This was not temporary motivation. This was design. He followed a strict routine that included reading, writing, lecturing, walking, and reflection at fixed times. This structure was not random. It reflected his philosophy. Kant believed that human beings are rational agents. But being rational does not mean you automatically live by reason. It means you have the capacity to choose reason over impulse. That choice must be trained. 5 a.m. was part of that training. Most people believe freedom means doing what they feel like doing. Kant believed freedom means doing what reason says is right, even when you do not feel like it. That difference changes everything. In the Groundwork of the Metaphysics of Morals, Kant explains that the moral worth of an action does not come from the result. It comes from the principle behind it. He calls this principle a maxim. A maxim is a rule you give yourself. If your rule is, I wake when I feel ready, then your life will be ruled by feeling. If your rule is, I rise at 5 a.m. because I have decided this is the structure that strengthens me, then your life is ruled by reason. Kant introduces what he calls the categorical imperative. In simple terms, he asks, can the rule you follow be applied as a universal rule for everyone? If a rule depends only on comfort, it cannot hold society together. But if a rule strengthens discipline and responsibility, it can be universal. Imagine a world where everyone acted only when they felt comfortable. Productivity would collapse. Trust would weaken. Agreements would fail. Research in behavioral science supports this concern. Studies in self-regulation show that people who delay tasks based on mood are significantly more likely to experience stress and lower long-term performance. Large-scale surveys on procrastination estimate that around 20% of adults identify as chronic procrastinators. That is roughly 1 out of every 5 people struggling with consistent self-control. Kant would not be surprised. He argued that inclination is unstable. Feelings change. Comfort changes. Weather changes. But a principle chosen by reason can remain stable. Waking at 5 a.m. is not magical because of the hour. It is powerful because it represents acting from duty instead of inclination. In the Critique of Practical Reason, Kant explains that the will becomes strong when it acts from duty. Acting from duty means you follow the rule because you recognize it as right, not because it gives pleasure. Modern research supports the idea that structured habits reduce mental strain. Studies on decision fatigue show that when daily routines are structured, people conserve mental energy for complex tasks. When you remove negotiation from simple decisions like wake time, you reduce internal conflict. This increases consistency in performance. Kant practiced this centuries before. Psychology measured it. There is also strong research on sleep consistency. Health organizations and medical journals consistently report that regular sleep and wake times improve cognitive function, emotional stability, and long-term health outcomes. It is not only about waking early, it is about waking consistently. Kant understood consistency as moral training. In the Metaphysics of Morals, he writes about duties to oneself. One of those duties is to develop your natural capacities. That includes intellectual ability, discipline, and self-control. Failing to cultivate your abilities, according to Kant, is a failure of duty to yourself. 5 a.m. becomes symbolic of self-respect. When the alarm sounds, there is resistance. Your body prefers warmth. Your mind suggests delay. That moment is a test, not a dramatic test, a quiet one. If you rise because you decided to rise, you strengthen the authority of reason over desire. This is what autonomy means in Kant's philosophy. Autonomy is self-law. You are not controlled by impulse. You are not controlled by external pressure. You are governed by principles you have chosen through rational reflection. Thomas Hobbes argued that without order, there is chaos. Kant internalized that principle at the individual level. Without inner order, the mind becomes a battlefield of impulses. 5 a.m. is inner order. It is the constitution of your private life. Now consider this slowly and seriously. Most advice about success talks about results that people can see: money, titles, awards, recognition, followers, promotions. These are visible outcomes. They attract attention. They are easy to measure, but Kant is not interested in what people can see. He is interested in what you are becoming when no one is watching. He focuses on character. Character is not built in public moments. It is built in private repetition. Modern research on habits supports this idea. Studies in behavioral psychology show that small actions, when repeated daily in the same setting, become easier over time. The brain begins to associate a specific time and place with a specific action. When that link is repeated enough, the action requires less effort. It becomes automatic. Researchers have found that consistency reduces resistance. The more stable the routine, the less mental energy it requires. This means the struggle is strongest at the beginning. At first, waking at 5 a.m. feels unnatural. Your body resists. Your mind creates excuses. You feel the weight of the decision. But when you repeat the action daily, something changes. The debate becomes shorter. The resistance becomes weaker. The alarm rings, and instead of arguing with yourself, you move. In the beginning, you are fighting the habit. Later, the habit carries you. And this is where identity begins to shift. At first, you are someone trying to wake early. After repeated discipline, you are someone who wakes early. That difference is not small. It changes how you see yourself. When you stop negotiating with yourself, your confidence changes. Not the loud type of confidence that speaks boldly. A quiet confidence. A stable one. Real confidence does not grow from repeating positive words. It grows from evidence. When you promise yourself something and you keep that promise again and again, you collect proof. You prove to yourself that your word has weight. If you say, "I will wake at 5 a.m.," and you do it consistently, you send yourself a message. My decisions matter. I follow through. I am not controlled by mood. That message builds trust inside you. And internal trust affects everything else. Your work improves because you approach it with discipline instead of delay. Your study improves because you train your mind to focus when you decide to focus. Physical training improves because you are already used to acting despite discomfort. Relationships improve because reliability improves. When you become consistent with yourself, you become consistent with others. People may not know you wake at 5 a.m., but they will notice that you are steady. That steadiness builds respect. Machiavelli wrote that before a ruler can control a state, he must understand power. Power begins with control. Kant would move this inward. Before you influence the outer world, you must govern the inner one. If you cannot command your own impulses, how will you command anything else? Nietzsche spoke about overcoming oneself. He described growth as rising above weakness. Kant gives a clear path for this. You overcome yourself by obeying principles you have chosen through reason, not dramatic actions, daily obedience. Marcus Aurelius advised that when you struggle to rise from bed, remind yourself that you are meant to fulfill your responsibilities as a human being. Kant would agree, but he would add something important. These responsibilities are not forced upon you blindly. They are recognized by your reason. You rise not because someone demands it, but because you understand it strengthens your character. 5 a.m. is not about extremes. It is not about showing off discipline. It is about consistency. The exact hour matters less than the rule. What matters is that you decide, and you follow through. There is research suggesting that structured morning routines are linked to better planning and higher reported productivity. Surveys among professionals in different fields often show that those with consistent morning habits feel more prepared and less rushed. They begin their day before demands begin. They think before they react. Not everyone wakes at 5, but those who wake at a consistent early hour often report feeling more in control of their schedule. Fewer rushed decisions, more deliberate planning. This reveals the deeper issue. The issue is not time. The issue is control. If your morning begins with checking messages, responding to noise, and reacting to other people's needs, you start the day defending. You are already behind. You are already responding. But if your morning begins in silence, with reading, planning, reflection, or exercise, you begin in command. You decide the first action. That sets the tone for the next. Kant teaches that human dignity comes from rational agency. This means the ability to choose actions based on reason. When you wake by decision, you exercise that ability. When you surrender to impulse, you weaken it. Each morning is small. It does not look important. But over months and years, small, repeated choices shape character, and character shapes destiny. The world will never see your alarm at 5 a.m. It will never see the moment you resist comfort. It will not applaud your early rising, but it will see the outcomes of a strengthened will. It will see discipline in your work, stability in your behavior, reliability in your commitments, calmness under pressure. Those results come from decisions no one witnessed. And that is exactly why they are powerful. Take a moment and examine your own rule. Do you live by a rule chosen through reason or by a pattern shaped by comfort? Your honest answer reveals your level of autonomy. The secret of 5 a.m. is not the clock. It is the commitment. It is the repeated choice to let reason lead and comfort follow. It is the training of the will. It is the construction of inner order. Through that order, freedom grows. Immanuel Kant did not wake early to compete with others. He woke early to remain faithful to a principle. His life shows that greatness is not always loud. Sometimes it is structured. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it begins before sunrise. If you learn to govern the first decision of your day, you begin to govern yourself. And when you govern yourself, you are no longer drifting. You are directing. If this perspective has strengthened your understanding, subscribe to Purely Noetical. Comment below. Reason over impulse. Tomorrow morning, when the alarm sounds, remember that the decision is not about sleep. It is about sovereignty. This channel builds structure, not excitement. Each lesson compounds. Each principle strengthens your internal authority. Continue training your will. Continue building order. And over time, the discipline others ignore will become the advantage they cannot understand.